Well, good evening. We are on our first day of Rohatsu Sesshin in the year 2020. And this time of year, I recall my favorite Buddhist story, which is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I think I'm going to take this off, if you don't mind, for the talk. I think we will all survive. It'll be okay. One of my favorite Buddhist stories is A Christmas Carol. In the story, Ebenezer Scrooge, this sad, sad man who has suffered so much of his life and behaved so badly and so stingingly toward so many people, is brought to look at his past karma and to see the results of his behavior. And so he makes an extraordinary change. He sees what he has done, and so he is, he's awakened. He is overcome with joy at realizing what he really is. And so he makes great change, and he improves the welfare of all the people around him. And he lives happily after. And so, so this led me also to think about our current situation and what I think many people are going through right now, which is a tremendous amount of grief. We have let me say that anyone who leads a country acts as a kind of national parent, an archetypal parent, an archetypal leader who displays various virtues that helps those that they govern, or the parent who helps the child grow and mature. So this is an important role that one takes on when one leads a public life like that. There's an expected public virtue. And I feel that for the past 4 years, we have suffered from deep emotional abuse. And we are just beginning to step out and look and to come to terms with it and deal with it. And I think it's not an easy thing at all. As I look around, I try to feel what is it people are feeling? What are they dealing with right now? And I am going to suggest that it is grief. Grief is something that it has no particular texture to it. It has no real flavor that we can grasp hold of. We might be feeling a certain way, and we cannot understand why we are feeling that way. Why are we angry? Why do we feel anxiety? Why do we feel there's all kinds of possibilities that grief brings? And we can't identify the grief. We can't identify it as grief, because grief is something underlying other behaviors. We can't identify why so many people have been sick. Huge increase in illness in the past 4 years. And we almost every day underwent some kind of diminishing expression in our national outlook. And even though the words were not against us personally, but we felt them, and we felt what other people might be feeling by those words that came from the archetypal parent. And for those who might have had a difficult parent of male or female, it simply entrenches those difficulties and that grief that we carry throughout our lives. We can't repeat our childhood. We can't even repeat the past 4 years. So feelings become entrenched in us, and we don't exactly know why we are feeling that way. I mean, the range of emotion connected to grief, or anger, depression, anxiety, resentment, fear, just an amazing array of emotion. And we chastise ourselves for feeling angry or for feeling some particular wish or hope that is so makes us ashamed of ourselves for thinking some of the things that we may have been thinking. So we are trying to climb out of this, and we're not quite there yet. And we are just at the gateway to be able to move forward and to perhaps mend in our own hearts the sense of destruction that we have been feeling these past years. I think it is quite a serious national issue. I'm going to read Dogen because you know that we will get to Dogen Zenji in this talk, but Dogen writes, "Even the worldly grieve when their nation and their customs are in peril. When the Buddha Dharma and the way of the Buddha are in peril, the disciples of the Buddha will inevitably feel grief. The reason for this peril is the irresponsible following of worldly ways. When people hearken to what is praised by the worldly, they do not find those who are genuinely wise. If you wish to find one who is genuinely wise, you will need to have the resourcefulness that illumines the past and looks forward to what lies ahead. What the worldly praise is not invariably wise, nor is it invariably saintly. And what the worldly slander is likewise not invariably wise, nor is it invariably saintly. Even so, by considering the matter 3 times over, you may avoid confusing the times when someone who is wise has invited censure with times when someone who is a fraud is being praised. If rulers should fail to make use of the truly wise, it will be a loss for their country. And if they should employ the slow-witted, it will be a source of national regret." I hadn't found that before in Dogen Zenji, and so it is, I feel where we are is somewhere in this stage of loss for the country and national regret about what we have been through. Of course, we have practice. We have the Buddha Dharma. We have the great potential to awaken. And I want to say that my feeling is awakening is but spiritual maturity that would allow us to look at the situation from a spiritual mature standpoint and not be any more overcome than we already are. There's no doubt that awakened people feel regret and remorse and grief. It isn't that one comes to awakening and then is aloof and beyond the experience of the world and those around them. But it does allow a way to look at the situation, a way to look at the world in such a way that we are less diminished by it. We can see through the game that is being played on the people and how the people and the nation are being and is being misused to benefit something quite unsavory. This, sense of spiritual maturity is essential for us all to, like a parent, to raise your child with that care and that space that we allow children to develop in. It is the same kind of sense that we allow the space of the nation to be foolhardy and also to caution and display wisdom for it to be able to grow. So it's deeply essential that we all come to this state of awakening, because the world is so desperate for us to be able to see clearly, for us to be able to influence those around us with a sense of wisdom, a sense of virtue, a sense of civility, and to not engage in the kinds of derogatory and dreadful speech that we have endured. It's not correct. It's not correct in any country. It's not correct anywhere. I heard one representative weeping because now he felt that his children would no longer be influenced by the kind of language that they were hearing. That this father's teaching would then be able to resonate with these children. Because at some point our children, they just don't believe us anymore. They go to school and they stopped believing the parents. So this other archetypal parent becomes deeply influential. And so it's very difficult then to raise children in some civility with some standard of exchange with one another. It's urgent that we help our young people along, that we help one another along through this time that I feel is grief. That it's been in an unadmitted grief for 4 years. And one of the best ways to deal with grief is to simply admit that one has been grieving. It's an extremely painful thing. It is not easy to realize that that is what has been at the heart of maybe the inability to be creative, or the inability to feel a sense of joy, an inability to connect with neighbors and friends, and to feel the resources of the community supporting one another. And again, grief has no flavor. My feeling is that grief is one of the deepest experiences we can have. The great loss of somebody close to us, or the great loss of that which we hold as tremendously important, our nation. As Dogen Zenji says, if rulers should fail to make use of the truly wise, it will be a loss for their country. And if they should employ the slow-witted, it will be a source of national regret. So we are at the edge of being able to step beyond this dark time that we have been in. And I'm speaking far beyond politics. I am not speaking about politics at all. I'm speaking about the texture of the national virtue, the texture of our own virtue, and the texture of our ability to be able to look to an archetype, a national archetype, who will be able to allow civility, allow our children to grow well. Dogen Zenji speaks about other grief very rarely in Shobogenzo. It doesn't come up very much. But he says that he has come across 2 other kinds of grief. And one grief is to have a teacher and not take up the deep matter with the teacher. That is a great grief that people might experience. And then the other grief is to want to take up the deep matter and to not be able to find a teacher. He says that is also a great life grief. So while we have such an excellent Sangha of awakened people in our Sangha, people who have been practicing for many, many, many years, you know, in our talks on Wednesday night, you hear the true Dharma come out of their mouths. So we have many possibilities with us in our very midst to be able to question the great matter, to be able to have dialogue with our fellow Sangha members about the great matter of awakening, the great matter of life and death. So we have no reason not to search it out with one another and to trust the Dharma that we hear in our Sangha members. And to want to take up the great matter and not find a teacher is also regrettable. There are so many teachers now. Maybe you'd have to search a little bit to find one you feel is right for you, but there are so many teachers now available in our country. So there is no reason to fall into that kind of grief. I feel also about grief, it's not something that I think, oh, we notice our grief and then we get over it. My feeling is that some level of grief is lifelong. And I think for any artist, that grief is a source of their expression. We've all experienced some loss from the very time we were babies, from the time we were children. We've lost something. Probably within the first 2-3 years, we lost something important to us. And we felt it so deeply as a little child. Maybe a pet died, or maybe our precious toy was lost, and something so simple as that. And yet, for a child, they feel it so deeply. And so some lives have mounting loss, as we know with COVID. So we have come not only through the 4 years of emotional abuse, and now we come into this year of profound loss of life in our country and grief that we have not had people to appropriately handle such a tragic occurrence. Maybe the worst health crisis that we have had in the entire history of the United States. The equivalent of, right now, the equivalent of one 9/11 every day. And this is a tremendous source of tremendous grief for us. A feeling of helplessness, a feeling that there's very little that we alone can do while we are staying home to avoid being contaminated or contaminating someone else. Grief at the callous attitude of our human species to not care about the lives of the health workers, the first responders. This is a source of tremendous grief, that is the condition of our human race in this country. We can't believe that we are so uncaring. So I point out that this word, not to make us feel terrible, but to simply understand that may be the source of what is going on in any difficulties that we may be feeling. And when we know that that's what it is, we can deal with it. So we come to Sesshin, and so all of this awakened for me because we sat in Sesshin and the ghosts of the past come forward to us when we are sitting. The ghosts of what's going on in our brains and the stuff that we've been carrying comes forward in the mind, and we sit with it, and it just rolls around, and eventually just we work it through, and we have the great opportunity in Sesshin to clear some of this, to clear house with some of the struggles that we've been having. To sit with it, to look at it clearly, understand, be with it, and come out the other side. My first teacher, Koban Roshi, always spoke about Sesshin as going to the hospital. You go to the hospital, you have no control over the schedule. Meals are served when they are served. You just have to follow along and kind of do what you're told and and stay in your room on your cushion. And so we go to the hospital, Sesshin Hospital, and after a few days, we come out the other side a little bit better for the work that we are doing on the cushion, better for seeing through the difficulties in the mind, the difficulties that we've been holding. A lot of ways, it's a time to let go of the holding that we've been doing. Grief is a lot of holding. So an opportunity to just loosen that up. Let the body sit and breathe. And we so deeply appreciate here, there are 5 of us in continuous practice. And we so deeply appreciate your appearance on Zoom. It means a great deal to us. In the beginning of Zoom, I would not have believed, as I said the other day, I would not have believed the sense of reach that we feel by right of those joining us on Zoom. Now, on the one day a week that we sit without Zoom, Fridays, it feels like, where is everybody? It feels really strange not to have that one day a week in which we are not on Zoom. It isn't that you aren't there, but there is a sense of great reach. I don't know what else to call it because we're not distant from one another, but there's a sense that we are in a very wide world. And so you, with your sitting, allow us to participate in that, as I hope you also feel. So this is our first day, our first evening, and we will continue. There will only be 2 talks this time, tonight and tomorrow night. And the next days are going to be silent. Last year we did this. We practiced for 2 days, just in silence, no ceremony, no chanting, even for meals. And people found it very, very deep. And they found themselves deeply quieted by it. So we will do that for 2 days this time also. Friday and Saturday will be days of silence. And of course, we hope that you will continue to join us, even though you won't be hearing us speak. But on the last morning, if you can sit any part of that morning, we'll join together with you, and we will speak together at the end of Sesshin that last morning, which is maybe about 7 o'clock to 7:30 or something. I'm not sure what. You can look at your schedule, but I hope you will be there so that we can voice together and express some gratitude to you for your practice. I know that the others sitting here are feeling similarly. I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see them. I don't always get to see people who are sitting. There's Allison. And there's Bob. And there is Steve. And here is Larry. There's Larry. So we are all sitting together and grateful. So thank you. I hope your families stay well. I hope you take great care. Some of our states are really in deep critical state, particularly in California, where they may have very soon a stay-at-home decree. And our own numbers are rising in the state of Washington. We are neighbors to Oregon and California. And so I sincerely hope that you will take great care, stay home as much as you can, and maybe shop at hours when there are a few people in the store. All kinds of things like that are important. And I know that among us, there isn't anybody who would not mask up. And that is the least we can do. Very important to respect others and care for others and ourselves. So thank you very much. Deep appreciation. Beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassed, I vow to become it.